Hello, 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 and welcome back to Scoutcast, brought to you by Fantasy Football Scout. As always, you're joined by me, Andy, FPL Mode, and we are also joined by freshly washed Seb. How's it going, Seb?
Good, thanks, mate. It's not me that's freshly washed, but I do like to stay fresh where I can. How are
Oh,
you?
good, man. Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Obviously, yeah, I seem to be last on the Scoutcast now in terms of overall rank, so that's fun. And somebody has had an absolute meteoric rise, which is Rich. How's it going, Rich?
Yeah, good, good. Yeah, I was just looking at the ranks. I can't believe what's happened this week.
You've had an
Joe
absolute
Joe
storm,
said he
mate.
spat out his tea when he was setting up the screens.
Yeah, yeah, and he's been spitting on me for he's been looking at my rank. But yeah, obviously you've had a good week. We'll be talking about your week in a bit. But it's been interesting. Obviously, Rich played his bench boost. Seb has had an okay week as well, with obviously a green arrow. My week's been a little bit different, but with all the talk of teams being so similar, we've all got variations, and obviously we've all had varying fortunes as well. In terms of what we're going to be talking about tonight, we're going to be looking at our points and how we've got on this week. I don't think we're going to be looking at mine for very long, but we might settle on Rich's for a little bit longer. We're going to be looking at forwards, because there is a lot of chatter and a lot of justified chatter about getting rid of Haaland for a week, maybe two. So we're going to be looking at replacements, considering we've got the blank and we've got the double game week coming up soon as well. Then we're going to be looking at defenders, because a lot of people are looking at maybe taking their Brentford defenders out, maybe their Arsenal defenders too, which we're going to be talking about, and who should we be replacing them with. One person in particular is definitely flavour of the month at the moment. Then we put together some different free hit 28 teams and a wildcard 28 team as well. Lots of chips are being used at the moment. People want to know what kind of thing they can make with their free hits and with their wildcards. So for the two most popular chips being used this week, we're going to have you covered there as well. And then we're going to have a look at our bus teams. Obviously, Brighton, Brentford, Southampton, and Crystal Palace still have a game left to play. I always forget the other two. It's just all about Brighton and Brentford, wasn't it? They are going to be playing on Wednesday, I believe, isn't it? I can't remember now. So we have some of the game weeks still left to go, but we can still look forward towards game week 28. We will also have some community questions at the end, so make sure you you stay here till the end so we can answer some of your questions. So let's have a look at some points now. Here are my points so far. So I have Raya in goal with 3, Estupinan with 1, Henry with 2, Trippier with 5. Thought that was a locked-in 12-pointer from Trippier. Could not believe Wolves scored. March with 2. A little bit of controversy there. Matoma with 6, Rashford with 3, Saka with 3, Kane with 13, Haaland with 6, and then Captain Tony with 4. And then on my bench, Kepa with 3, Odegaard with 7, Zinchenko with 6, and Botman with 2. That bench is tame compared to some of the benches I've seen this week so far. In terms of moves I didn't do anything. I rolled, so I've got 2 free transfers moving into next week. This is obviously only a week after my wild card. There was no decisions to be made for me. I was always benching those Arsenal boys because there was nobody I was going to play over them. I was always going to play Saka over Odegaard because he's on pens. There's nothing here that I thought afterwards, I wish I would have done that. The only thing I guess was something on my wild card, which was going March over McAllister, but that's more to do with kind of what we've seen since then. I thought it was a really split decision between the two of them. March could have had the goal, and then all of a sudden no one's really talking about it. So yeah, it is what it is. 48 points so far. I'm still expecting to finish on a green arrow, but I wasn't expecting a red at this point. But there you go, 200k. I'll be back top by next week, don't worry, lads. Moving on to Rich's points. Sorry, Seb, you've got to follow the Lord Mayor's show here. Rich, talk us through your game week so far.
Yeah, it's gone pretty well so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, 83 points, game week rank of 28,000. Yeah, I played my bench boost, as we said. I mean, I've got the least points on the bench out of all of us. My bench, for the record, has Steele got 1, Rashford got 3, Botman got 2, Zinchenko got 6. So a total of 12. And possibly Steele's going to play another game.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to break 20 points, which is probably what I expected. But I mean, the rest of the team did really, really well. I guess I benched the right players in a way. So Raya got 3, Gabriel 14, Pinnock 2, Trippier 5, Ward-Prowse 3. He hit the bar, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think Pinnock should have scored as well. McAllister captain. 14, Matoma 6, Saka 3, Kane got 13, Tony got 2, Haaland 6.
I mean,
Botman could have scored as well.
you did really well, and like you just said, like this had the potential to be an absolute monster. Like Pinnock got one saved off the line. Trippier, that was unlucky. Botman almost scored. Ward-Prowse at the bar.
Raya had a shot, didn't he?
He did. Yeah,
but I'm not going to complain. But it looks like I haven't, apart from Gabriel, there's not really been a monster score.
Yeah.
Gabriel and Kane. Obviously, Kane's very highly owned. But I think the players who did return are very lowly owned. Like Gabriel was like 6% EO. McAllister's under 20%. And that's as captain as well. So I think the right players have got points.
Yeah, it's a good week, mate. I mean, what's your rank rise this week?
I've gone from 330k to 133 with very 7 nice. To go plus captain, so 8 to go.
Yeah, that's very.
But
nice,
I could get into the top 100k. Obviously, Tony's the warrior, I suppose.
Yeah. Ooh, some of us are hoping he does something, mate. Let's move on to Seb's points. Seb, talk us through your game week so far.
Sure. I don't think I've had a bath in about 2 years. Baths. Showers.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, I thought, yeah, so you do.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
No, but like, I think it was the last time I played rugby. Last time I had bath. So, anyway, so I scored, I don't know, somewhere in the middle. Didn't bench boost, probably should have done. I'll start with the bench. It was Kepa with 3, Odegaard with 7, Gabriel with 14. Remember how I've been saying he's going to score a goal? Yeah. Well, yeah, I benched him for the second time. Was it Chelsea he scored against as well? And I think I benched him for that one. And then Botman with 2. The rest of my team is Steele, which was my transfer, I think, as we discussed. Trippier, me, Henry, so a couple to go there. Saka, Rashford, Matoma, McAllister captain, Haaland, Kane, and Tony. But much more interesting than that is the fact that I am 1,000 places ahead of Rich, literally because he has made more transfers, which I think might be because over the World Cup, when we were talking about, the unlimited transfers and how the advice was don't make them until, the last minute, because if you're in a tie break, the fewer transfers is the one that goes ahead. Really good advice, but I remember saying to Rich, great advice, but it's worth less than 1 point. So if you need to use a transfer just to visualize something or whatever, go for it. And well, Rich made some transfers, and now I'm ahead of him on transfers. So it's all coming together.
You can't script it. You have to remember though, I trusted you, Seb. Also, I was about 1 millionth in the world at Christmas, so I didn't.
Yeah, man, I
didn't think it would make much difference.
You've got what is it? We've got the same players, or similar enough players. We've both got Matt captain, but you've got JWP to go. So I think it's basically impossible for me to be ahead of you come the end of this week.
It's not after what we saw with Ward-Prowse last week when I started him.
Right.
Yeah, but you'll be this time next week. You'll be first.
Just for anybody watching or listening, we've got a group chat on WhatsApp with us 3 in it. And this is what it's like at the moment. It's just these 2 chatting, how excited they are. Oh, isn't everything brilliant? And I'm just sat in the background. I don't say much anymore. It's just these 2 chatting. Terrible. Absolutely.
Well, you're on tilt, aren't you?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Not at all. No, I am. Big time. I almost went to... no, I said I almost had a bath last night with my toaster. No, it's... Yeah, do you know what? You go through those moments, and Rich, I think you said this to me about 3 years ago, and it's always stuck in my head. When FPL is going well, it's the easiest game in the world, and when it's not going well, it can seem like you just don't know how to bring it back, and it just feels like that at the moment. It feels like everything seems to be right, but I just can't seem to get those really nice gains. It just happens sometimes. You just have to keep going. I got my plan all the way up till 30, 31, so I just got to keep going, really.
It's true, but it changes so quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
It really does. I mean, I almost abandoned my bench boost plan last week. I was looking at, could I free hit and bring all the Liverpool players back in? Yeah. I was genuinely thinking that. And all I've had to do is bring in Steele, bench boost, and get lucky. I mean, obviously, a lot of things have gone my way to get a big rank rise, and it was just not having Salah, having the right Brighton midfielders, and having Gabriel.
Hang on a second. We haven't even mentioned that, have we? We haven't even mentioned the biggest bit of variance we've seen all season. Everybody giving it the big one about Liverpool winning 7-0.
Excuse me, what word was that, Andy?
Oh,
what word was
variance.
Can't be using that here.
And then the next week they lose 1-0 to Bournemouth. There was somebody on, I can't remember who it was now, saying, well, you know what's going to happen. They're going to lose 1-0 to Bournemouth next week. It just goes to show how fluky and swingy and funny FPL can be sometimes, isn't it? And Rashford, Salah missing the pen as well to get him onto 0 points is just it's just how it goes, isn't it? So.
And the silly thing as well is like if it had been the other way around, like okay, 7-0's massive, whatever. But say they'd beaten like Bournemouth 5-0, drawn with or lost even to Man United, you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. That's probably what we expected.
Yeah.
Never mind. But it's just having that way around. It's funny old game.
It really is.
And then look at Everton. Just for people did hits for Liverpool players, Everton players. Tarkowski got 9 points. Pickford got 8. McNeil scored.
Yeah,
I think he's returned 2 game weeks in a row.
City are keeping clean sheets as well.
3 in a row for them.
Oh yeah, Edison.
Yeah,
it's just such a good example of like you go for the higher probability play, but there's no guarantee you will receive that when you play it. At some point, Edison will keep lots of clean sheets, but who knows if it'll be when you have him.
I still haven't had a goalkeeper clean sheet for weeks, maybe even months. I went from Edison to Pickford and even on the bench boost, I got Raya and Steele. I can't get
last time you had a goalkeeper clean sheet, I had a wash.
Yeah, it's absolutely mental. I think
there was probably a better clean sheet in there somewhere, wasn't it?
I think I messaged someone the other day saying that on my wild card, I think I gained from the last 2 weeks. I think I've gained 8 fixtures and lost 40 points, which I don't really know how that works.
So like, was it game week 16? Which the end of the pre-World Cup period, I didn't do great anyway because like my Haaland in and out thing didn't go great, but I was like 90k. So like even now, Green Arrow, me and Rich are happy in the chat. It's still like 40k off where I was at the pre-World Cup.
Yeah, I know. Well, I triple captain Rashford and I went up to 75k. I've just slowly dropped since then. Anyway, moving on to another forward that a lot of people are thinking about taking out, which is obviously Haaland. Haaland's obviously got a blank now, and then he's got Liverpool away in game week 29 and doesn't have a double. So a lot of people are thinking about taking him out for 1 week, maybe 2 weeks. I'll be taking him out for 2 weeks. I don't know about you boys, but we've got some forwards here up on the screen. So these are the viable alternatives or the viable people you can go to when Haaland obviously is going to leave your team, if he is going to leave your team. All of these players, well, not all of these players, sorry, play in the blank, but all of them have stats that we can show you, and I'll hand you over to Seb in a second. But a lot of these players do play in the blank and then have a double game week in 29 as well. There's varying reasons why we want different options here. Some of them are on penalty, some of them are value players that we're happy to bench afterwards. Some of them are players that have all of a sudden kind of come into our thoughts and we're looking at as well. Some of them don't blank in 32, which I know a lot of people will want for their strikers as well. But Seb, just talk us through the basic kind of values you've got in this table here, in the options we've got.
Sure. So I'll quickly run through the list as well, just for people listening. We are looking at Watkins, Solanke, Mbumo, Tony, Ferguson, Havertz, and Felix from Chelsea, Iheanacho, Darwin, mostly for comparison. Haaland, again, he's the one we're taking out, so for comparison. Isak and Wilson from Newcastle, Johnson from Forest, Kane, and Danny Ings. We have a bunch of stats on here. I won't go through all of them. If you want to see them, please, by all means, come hit us up on YouTube. We've got their prices. We've got their goals per 90, XG per 90, XA per 90, and then XGI per 90. If any of those don't add up, it's not. I haven't summed them. I've taken the figures from the Scout members area, so it'll be a rounding thing, but it shouldn't be off by far. There's an extra column as well just for penalties. Quite simple. Yes, no. Are they on penalties? Because we know that can make a big difference. The only real questions there are probably Iheanacho. We think maybe yes, but Maddison could. I don't think we've had confirmation. And then I've got Isak and Wilson both down as a yes. Although obviously if they're both on the field at the same time, which is possible, Isak's minutes are being limited to 70 odd, I think at most, there may be a decision to be made there. And then finally, the second half of this, we have their fixtures from 28 to 33, which includes the blanks in 28, although we're probably not looking at those players immediately. The doubles in 29. 32 is a potential blank as well for Brighton, Chelsea, City. So we've just got that indicated. There's a very small chance of a double for your Brighton and Newcastle, which would be against each other as well, players in 30 and 31. But I think, according to people smarter than me about fixtures, that's more likely to be after this period. And then we stop at 33 because that's that last week before 34 when we have this next round of doubles. It's probably the period we're trying to fill up, or at least we're trying to fill up and then maybe we're benching or transferring out, looking to jump onto 34. So I think based on combining the numbers on the left, obviously value, as you said, which is an important part of it, and the fixtures, which for me are the real key, because I think it's easy to focus on who's a good Haaland replacement like now, who plays in 28, who has a good double. But you may have to hold this player for a bit as well. So either you want to bench them and they're nice and cheap so you can use your money elsewhere, or you need some other good fixtures out of them. So the ones that jump out to me for a combination of reasons are probably Watkins. That's super popular pick as well. There, I don't think I need to explain that too hard, but we can go over it. Solanke, mostly for the value. And then the Chelsea players. And I think I would favour Havertz because minutes and penalties, even though Felix's numbers here are better. And his goals per 90 are actually quite a way down, but his XG per 90 is 0.54. Small sample compared to the goals per 90 of 0.21. But we've seen him, miss big chances, hit woodwork. Over a long period of time, you might expect him to perform closer to his XG than his G here. But there's no guarantee that period of time will be the next 3 or 4 weeks. With Havertz, minutes and penalties, I think I prefer him from the two. But is there anyone that jumps out to you two here on these tables?
Well, Rich, I was going to say that I think Seb's got it nailed on in terms of the 3 best options there. I think Watkins, Havertz and Solanke are the 3 best. I'd like to chuck in Brennan Johnson there as well, because I think the fixtures are nice. He's on penalties, and Forest at home, they do score goals. They do at least score 1 goal most of the time when they're at home. If you had to rank those 4, Rich, in terms of in your thinking at the moment, who you're going for, and could you just explain kind of why you're going for them as well? Because it's not just as easy as, I think they'll score the most points, because obviously we've got a few things to think about. How are you kind of ranking them at the moment?
Yeah, so I think for me, and probably for most people, Watkins, I think he's clear top. He has everything, doesn't he? He's got the stats, as are shown on here. He's got the fixtures, and he's got the penalties. Even though he's not particularly good at penalties, he's not exactly Tony. But I mean, especially for the short term, just even for this fixture this week, you get in Bournemouth at home. Then we've obviously got the international break.
Yeah.
And I mean, his double in 29, it's not amazing, but Chelsea away, Leicester away, I mean, it's good enough. And then crucially, game week 30 looks really, really tough for a lot of fixtures, but he's got Forest at home.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Brennan Johnson, actually, because I was, looking at the fixtures, they're decent,
Yeah.
Because again, they've got a very, very good double in 29 and then 30. I guess the thing that goes against him is when you look at the stats column, it's not great, is it? It's not comparing to the others quite as well. But again, like you say, on penalties, I think I'll disregard any player on this list not on penalties, personally. That's why I wouldn't be that attracted to Ings. I mean, Darwin, the fixtures are just too difficult. I know Seb loves Darwin, but I think even he'd struggle to justify Darwin.
I think Darwin arguably is a transfer out, like Haaland. We've got them here for the comparison as much as anything, because there are people who may still own Darwin who either haven't wildcarded or are looking to use chips now. Maybe you're trying to get rid of Darwin rather than bring him in. For me, I think, maybe.
I like this table as well, because mentioning Haaland, I can see how much Haaland has overperformed when you've got the G per 90, in 0.86 XG per 90, but he's scoring 1.19. So it shows how much he's overperforming as well.
That was higher too, as well. Like, as well, like recently, it's sort of been like, Haaland hasn't been, I don't know why I went, I don't know who I'm doing an impression of, me probably. But like Haaland, maybe hasn't been as good recently. But those numbers are still ridiculous. Of course, they take a huge part of the first part of the season in, but he's still one of the best strikers in the league. I don't think anyone's questioning that. It's just funny how, because he was so good earlier, and now he's just like so good. It's crazy how it feels, we haven't captained him recently. We're thinking about taking him out. Of course, the blank is a big part of that. But if he was still, putting up a hat trick every other game, would we be thinking maybe we hold him for Liverpool more? I mean, we see on here Liverpool are yellow. I should say this is color-coded by the XG against each of these teams. So obviously your dark red is your best defense, and your bright green is your poorest defense. So Liverpool are kind of in the middle. So there's every chance, as we've seen, that they could go and concede to someone like Haaland.
Yeah. And it also depends, I guess, on captaincy, because you mentioned game week 31 could be a double for Newcastle and Brighton. And I checked, and Mikhail's got it as a 47% chance that double is there for Newcastle and Brighton. So, I mean, if that's the case, we're not going to be captaining Haaland, at home to Leicester. However, I guess the counterpoint to that is people are going to be bringing him back for 30 with Southampton based on plans I've seen people have.
Yeah, I think whatever we do here, it's probably I just use my team. I've got Tony, Haaland, Kane. Say I do Haaland to Watkins. I then do Tony to Haaland, basically reversing it in monetary terms in probably ahead of game week 30, I would say, after these doubles.
That's what
I
I'm
know, yeah, fair. I know some people have maybe looked at 34 or what have you, but I think that's a budget thing and maybe wanting to get like Fernandes and Salah rather than like a preference thing.
Yeah. I mean, Seb, I've just mentioned it there about Solanke and Brennan Johnson. The thing that is really attractive about them is their price in terms of if we're going forward and knowing that Brighton have that double in 31 or potentially do, we're not getting rid of our Brighton players, which is a few of those midfielders. And the problem a lot of us are going to have is we're going to have 8 really good attacking players. We're going to have 3 strikers and 5 midfielders. We're going to have to bench one of them, aren't we? And at least with Solanke and Brennan Johnson, you're quite happy to do that, aren't you? Although the fixtures aren't too bad, you're quite happy to do that. Whereas if you get somebody like Watkins, if you get somebody like Havertz in, all of a sudden you're thinking, I'm not wanting to bench these players. And then what you're going to do? Bench one of the Brighton ones. But then is that not too bad because their fixtures aren't amazing? What's your thoughts on that?
We should say that Iheanacho is down there at 6.1 as well, which isn't too bad. But I agree with you. I think it's not like a you don't want to bench an expensive player thing. That's obviously a bit of a psychological trap, which I have fallen into as much as anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more the fact that that money could be working harder for you in the team.
Yeah.
Right now, we've all got 4 million, if not 8 million, after the Haaland transfer in our bank. But in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to be wanting to do like what, Odegaard to Fernandes, then maybe even that slot to a Salah or another slot like a Saka. I'm not necessarily saying Saka, but to a Salah. At that point, and I worked it out in my own team, right now I literally am to the penny being able to make those moves and have a team that I think would contain Haaland, Salah, and a good rest of team by about 30 or 31, whenever it is I need that. So while right now we have loads of money, being able to put that money back into my first 11 in a few weeks' time could be really important. And as you say, that's where your Solankes are a bit more attractive.
Yeah.
One thing I'd love just to point out as on here as well, because you mentioned, Watkins' stats are good. I think they're decent. On here, he's probably middle, if not slightly below middle. But we should say that since Unai Emery has come in, there's been obviously a little bit change in the way they've played. Maybe he's motivated or found better ways of getting more out of Watkins. Earlier in the season, we were very much seeing him put up like, the best XG he had. Just looking through the app here is like 0.56 was the best without penalties. This is lots of 0.2s, 0.1s, middling. More recently, yes, penalties, of course, with like a 1.53, but a penalty is only like 0.78 or so. So, not far off doubling that with non-pen XG. There's a 0.74, 0.66, a couple of poor ones, then a 0.6 and 0.53. So, and we've seen he's scored is it maybe 6 goals in 7 or something? So even though those numbers are kind of maybe middling even to poor, they've been so very good since Emery's come in that I think it's fair to give him a little boost in your considerations if you believe whatever Emery is doing is sustainable.
Yeah.
Plus, he's much more likely to actually get I say much more likely. He's had a couple of earlier subs, but I feel like he's more secure than like we look at Wilson or Isak, for example. Their minutes are probably much, much below. So even though they're per 90 are better, I'd be more confident in Watkins getting the minutes as well.
That's a really good shout.
I was just about to
they're
mention
two up front,
Isak,
aren't they?
actually.
And no wings, I think.
Yeah. I was just about to mention Isak, actually, because it seems to be... He played very well at the weekend, but obviously Wilson's still there in the wings, kind of like waiting to come back in as well, because Wilson was benched this weekend. But, Rich, any temptation with Isak? Because... I'm not going to lie, I have not thought about putting him in at all.
There was a very brief moment. We talked about it earlier, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
Then when Seb was going through this list, I did think about, there's the potential double in 31. But I just think the defenders for Newcastle are so good. Yeah. They're so easy to get in. They're so cheap. And I think we are going to be looking at selling a couple of different defenders after the doubles. So I think they're such obvious replacements. So I think I'm going to go triple Newcastle defence. I've got 2 at the moment. I mean, I do understand why it is a bit more fun. I mean, it wasn't much fun yesterday with 2 Newcastle defenders. I didn't even want to watch the second half, with 2 clean sheets. So it's not quite as fun. But yeah, I don't have that much appeal. And the fact that Seb's had to say he's got them both on penalties, it depends who's on the pitch.
Yeah,
it makes it even more of a lottery than normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. And last but not least, Seb, Havertz. I mean, he's the only one here with 3 home fixtures in his next 3 games. And he's on penalties. And if you ask any Chelsea fan, he has been absolutely brilliant the last couple of games. Is it just the fact that Chelsea don't score enough goals? Is that the biggest thing that's stopping people getting him in? Because I'm really tempted to go with Havertz instead of Watkins. But Watkins seems the obvious move. But Havertz, especially now he's on pens with Everton, Villa, and then Liverpool at home, that seems quite tasty.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, man. I think that's unless like my planning says I need the Solanke money, I think I'm Watkins or Havertz. And which, for the record, if Felix had penalties or just had some more minutes, I'd be all over that. But I think the sensible pick is Havertz, even if the sexier pick is Felix. But I've not bathed in a while, so I can't be going for the sexy pick. I think look at those fixtures as well. Obviously, these fixtures are leaning very heavily on what the XG is telling us. You are free to disagree with that. That's entirely fair. But that's how this has been color coded. Of course, as well, I've chosen where the arbitrary lines between colors are. I've tried to do it in blocks, so like it's not just dividing the table by 5. It's kind of doing teams who are grouped together in terms of how close they've conceded, how close their XG against per 90 is. So it should show like similarly strong or weak defenses. But looking at those fixtures, I wonder if I would prefer, let's say Everton's and Bournemouth's defence are equally poor, give or take. Of course, Dyche has come in, so there's a bit more context there. Villa, Leicester, says Villa's a bit better here, but Leicester's away from home, so... And then you're Chelsea and Liverpool. I wonder if Liverpool home, according to the colour coding here, is better, and its home is maybe slightly better. If that's the period, and then it's Wolves and Forest, so that's the period that I'm mostly needing this player, do I slightly edge Havertz? Do I also take into account that in the last few, Chelsea have looked better with this 3-4-3 that they've returned to? We'll obviously get onto their wing backs in a moment. Maybe I'm just wanting, to go, oh, look at something has changed recently, and therefore I want to do something about that. But I think that's my choice, and genuinely, it's a lot closer than I think I thought it was about a week ago when I was pretty set on Watkins. And I might wait until the last minute to make my mind up here because nothing has really swayed me in either direction, and I'd love for one of you to do that.
Yeah. Before we move on to the defenders then, Rich, because I think this is the big thing people are going to be thinking about. If they want to go cheap, they can choose between Solanke and Brennan Johnson. But if they wanted to go for that Watkins or Havertz, I know you said Watkins is clear. Is that genuinely, there's no thinking for you, it's Watkins?
Yeah, I was just thinking then when Seb was talking about Havertz, I was looking at the numbers again. I genuinely think, and don't forget, I have awful transfer value because I seem to build up value and I sell my players. I would rather go for Brennan Johnson or Solanke than Havertz. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, these stats back it up. When you look at the difference in price, and Johnson and definitely Solanke are more nailed, you'd have thought.
What, than Havertz, do you think?
Potentially.
Whoa.
Or Havertz isn't more nailed than them. Maybe it's level. Maybe I'm talking rubbish there. But when you look at the value of them, I think I'd find it hard with my situation where I haven't got much money to justify going for Havertz over Watkins first of all, or over Solanke or Johnson.
I suppose probably more nailed in terms of Chelsea have got 2 games in quick succession in 29. Will Havertz 100% play both? I don't think I would say 100%. Whereas Watkins, 100% he's going to be on the team sheet, don't you? Like, you 100%. Whereas I suppose Havertz, although he is very, very important to that Chelsea team, their squad is ridiculous. He could easily drop out and be rested for a game.
And I just look at, look at like a couple of weeks ago, they played Spurs, didn't they, Chelsea? And you look at Havertz stats, it's like 0.00 XG, 0.02 XA.
Yeah.
And he played 90 minutes.
I don't see him missing either game, though. If it was the other way round and it was Liverpool first and then Aston Villa, maybe. But he's going to play after the international break, and then he's got Liverpool. He's not going to be benched for Liverpool, is he? So, yeah, I think he's more nailed than you think. Seb's like going, wow, he could be.
I don't even think it's about nailedness, though. I genuinely think I prefer Solanke or Johnson. But like I say, I am factoring in price here.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think on minutes, like, who would play in this 3-4-3? Which, as the chat have said, this isn't necessarily Havertz as a traditional 9. We know he's never really been that, even like over at Leverkusen. But if he's getting the numbers to put up similar things to like a Watkins at the 9 or whatever, who also can do a supporting role, it doesn't really matter, does it? I think he has played 90 the last few, and who would start in that? Because if Felix is on the left, is it Sterling on the right? Admittedly, maybe, I don't know, Pulisic could come on the left, Felix could go up front, probably do a similar role. But realistically, who is taking Havertz's starting spot. So it's more just early subs. And I don't think we've seen much of that either. So I'd have slightly more confidence in his minutes than you do. Although I don't know if that's enough to push me away from Watkins.
I don't think I'm not saying I'm unconfident on his minutes, but I do think the other ones have better minutes. I mean, Sterling, how long's Sterling been back for now, for example? He's got to be factored in.
I'll have a little look for you, 1 second.
Because it feels like he's only just come back, Sterling himself.
So I have 0 minutes for Sterling played against Leicester. Obviously, we know that 67, 82, 45 in reverse order the last few. Obviously, the 45 being just after he was out. So, yeah, potentially he's got some X-Mins to go up.
And we have seen Potter do crazy things. Like maybe not as much recently when his job's been on the line, but he has. There's been a couple of lineups where you're like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
It's what put me off Kepa. It's only because Mendy's been mysteriously, out of the picture.
Yeah. I much prefer Havertz's next 3, but I love the fact Watkins has the double, but it's bookended by Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest at home. That's really nice, isn't it? Because you just don't have to worry about him for a little bit, do you? But I think it's really close between them. And I think the fact we've got Solanke and Brennan Johnson there as other options too, I think is really nice.
I just wanted to shout out from the chat, Derek saying, surprised we haven't considered Jesus. I think, to be fair, I'm not sure. I obviously haven't got it up here, so apologies. But I think the way his fixtures would fall, obviously he does play in 28, but we all have triple Arsenal elsewhere. So you're probably looking, if you wanted to do Haaland to Jesus, you're probably looking at doing another transfer as well. So I don't know if it works out for what our purposes are here. Also, maybe this sounds stupid to say now that, after the beginning of the season, but is Jesus the number 9 nailed forever, or at least immediately, given how well Martinelli, Trossard, even Nketiah, when he was playing, he's injured until after the international break. So I think it's fair to overlook Arsenal here, although in a couple of weeks' time, maybe we'll be back on that subject.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to Rich before we started saying that I'm likely going to be selling my Arsenal players for 29, and I'm not really sure when I'm going to be bringing them back because I'm free hitting in 32. And, in terms of fixtures wise, I'm probably not going to be bringing them back until after 32. So, yeah, if he's fit and he's starting every game and he's back in the Arsenal team, but I think they're going to slowly bring him back. They're doing okay without him anyway. There's no point rushing him back and trying to get results. It's not like they need to, is it? So, I think it's going to be hard to go with him until he's playing he's playing and starting again consistently, which I don't think we'll see until, 33, 34 maybe. Right, moving on to defenders. So defenders, a lot of people are thinking about maybe moving an Arsenal player out in 29. A lot of people are thinking about these Brentford players and the fact obviously they've got the fact that their fixtures aren't amazing now moving forward, and obviously maybe people have players like Henry, me, or Pinnock, not Pinnock, obviously, that they maybe want to get rid of. And Seb, you've done us a little table here on potential replacements. And the player that is 4th on the table there seems to be the latest bandwagon.
Sure. So this is a much smaller table than the last one. You could absolutely go elsewhere. For example, we've mentioned Newcastle. I think on wildcards, that would be very popular. But we're kind of looking at probably the 2 players and some comparisons around them that have been most talked about to either replace your Arsenal defender in 29 or maybe one of your Brentford defenders, which I think is where I might go. Those 2 players are Shaw and Chilwell, of course, but we do have Dalot, Wan-Bissaka and James on here. X-Mins, obviously, for you to be decided. James is a very, very interesting one. I think Wan-Bissaka and Dalot are probably second to Shaw. Even if in isolation, I do like Dalot a lot. Those minutes, Wan-Bissaka started the last one, I believe, would worry me a bit more. So once again, we have price up here for you. We have goals and assists per 90, which Chilwell comes out comfortably on top with. But of course, it's important to remember he has quite low minutes compared to the others so far. Wan-Bissaka is on 0.00 for that because that's his job. James comes second, of course. We have XG per 90, which Dalot actually comes out on top, but only just ahead of Chilwell and James. Once again, Shaw, Wan-Bissaka quite low there. XA per 90, we have James on top here, doubling Chilwell. Again, minutes, take that with a little pinch of salt. Wan-Bissaka, not too bad there, but still bottom of the list. And then Shaw and Dalot just in the middle. And XGI per 90, obviously, you add that all together. We have James comfortably out in front, actually, there. Chilwell in, third, just behind Dalot, although that's 0.16, 0.17, and then Shaw with 0.15. So very, very close. I've also put up the team, so Man United and Chelsea's XGA per 90. I've sort of color coded this one, but they're the same number. It's 1.18 and 1.21. It's the same. And then we do have the fixtures, of course, here as well. Man United blank, Chelsea do not. Then they both have doubles. Although looking at that, Chelsea's double is a lot more attractive than Man United's. So really the question is Chilwell or Shaw or James. He potentially could be second in line for penalties. The comments from Potter were Havertz is our penalty taker, and then something along the lines of like James is in there potentially as the backup. Although when Havertz did take his penalty, we know Sterling was in the mix too. So there's every chance that what Potter says and what actually happens, we may want some proper confirmation, seeing them all on the field, seeing a couple of penalties before we know. But imagine Reece James would run penalties and imagine he was fit. I would be all over that. The problem is fitness. And I think that's why many will go for Chilwell, who obviously has fewer minutes in his legs, does have slightly poorer numbers, but much better conversion recently. That finish at the weekend was nuts. So what are you two thinking?
Yeah, go on then, Rich. Talk to us about Chilwell, because he is becoming, he's picking up steam now. I think, did he go up last night or he's going up tonight? I'm not sure which one, but
he did go up. Yeah, 5.8 to 5.9.
Yeah, so obviously he's expensive, 5.9. He's the most expensive one here. But we're seeing that Potter's now playing a system where he's getting the best out of these wing backs again, finally. So is Chilwell worth investing in now before the double?
It's tricky because I know game week, I love these two Chelsea defenders, Chilwell and James. And I think if I was on wildcard, for example, I'd probably find it almost impossible to resist.
Yeah, you go both, wouldn't you?
I probably would, because I know I was looking at it game week 1. But the difference here is if you're not wildcarding, and probably even if you are, you're not going to have a bench this week. So you're bringing in players where you'll have no backup if they don't play. I mean, obviously, it does look like Chilwell will play this week. What's interesting as well is that the England squad announcement will be on Thursday as well. So maybe that will give us some insight somehow, into if James himself is fit. Because, I mean, looking at these numbers, I'd always prefer James if he was nailed. I think he is by far the more exciting pick. However, I wouldn't trust him to play both in 29, especially if he's in the England squad.
Yeah.
Coming back from, I think it's Italy and Ukraine. I think the second game's at home actually, so it's not much of a travel back or anything.
Yeah.
But just I couldn't trust him to stay fit for that long, for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And the penalty thing, I think that feels like a pipe dream. You have to get lucky in so many ways. You have to, I mean, not only for them to have a penalty, but then for him to take it over Havertz and score. I mean, I remember he got a brace against Newcastle. I think it was last season. He was on the pitch, and he didn't take the third for a hat trick.
Yeah.
So ever since then, I thought him taking a penalty is less likely.
Yeah.
I've gone on a tangent about James, but Chilwell,
us, Rich.
I don't think I'd risk bringing him in unless I had a very obvious route, and I'm struggling to see what that obvious route would be.
See, I'm tempted by Chilwell, but not this week. I've seen, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit because it's something that I've seen on the timeline that I'm absolutely shocked at the moment. But Seb's like, what?
Shocked. Your face, then.
Absolutely shocked. No, but for instance, I'll talk about it now. A lot of people are thinking about taking Estupiñán out for Chilwell because a lot of people think there's this big thing, and it feels a lot to me like Twitter just kind of getting worried about something and it becoming a massive thing about the fact that Estupiñán is in Australia for his international break and he might not come back in time. Somebody, I think it was FPL Bateman, put on that actually Mile Jedinak used to do that all the time and he used to come back and play and it was absolutely fine. And he was looking at the time. He even went into as far as looking at the flight times and all this stuff as well. So I think that's I think it's been blown out of proportion a little bit personally.
Do you know what this is?
Estupiñán has the blank, but I think getting Chilwell in 29 is the better play personally. Although the fixture is nice this week, but maybe that's just me.
I think it's one I'd want to delay if possible. I think the fixture this week is it is irresistible, at home to Everton. But I mean, they've not been great defensively still. The defensive data for the team, not talking about their attacking stats or anything. So I think it's definitely one you can wait for after an international break, and then make your decision. And it does. I mean, that Estupiñán to Chilwell thing, it feels a lot like, and I know I ended up doing the move, the Martinelli to Odegaard thing.
Yeah.
Where people really wanted Odegaard. I mean, I ended up doing it myself. It feels like people really want Chilwell. The only way they can do it is by saying, "Oh, Estupiñán might not play in 29," which is something we knew when people bought Estupiñán in instead of Dunk on wildcard.
Yeah.
So it feels very similar, even though it's a different situation. It feels like you can justify it in a weird way to yourself.
Yeah.
I think the weird thing is that the Odegaard one made sense, but then things changed, right? The striker got injured. Martinelli started playing with Trossard in that sort of left wing striker swapping role. So new information came to light that we didn't have when we went Odegaard for the minutes is better than Martinelli. And over that period as well, Odegaard did get many more minutes than Martinelli. Martinelli got benched in one game. So I don't think that was...
I guess, no, I get that, but I guess
Sorry,
my point it wasn't that Martinelli was a bad pick, though. I think we all knew Martinelli was a good pick. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a bad example, but...
Oh, no, I won't dwell on that. I think Estupinian, I don't think we started this, thankfully, but it might have been 2 weeks ago when we mentioned, when we were looking at wildcards for this period, we mentioned that Estupinian had this he's got 2 matches, one in Australia a couple of days before the next match, etc. But the argument there wasn't get him and transfer him out. The argument there was, should you therefore get Dunk, who maybe is more short of minutes, even if Estupinian is the better, more exciting attacking pick. And by the way, I don't know if the numbers will reflect this, but watching the match at the weekend, obviously Brighton Leeds, so I watched that twice, in fact, Estupinian was terrifying. I don't think he ever received any of these, but there were 3 times when McAllister twice and someone else could have played him, not just into the box, but basically one-on-one with our goalkeeper. As an FPL non-owner and as a Leeds fan, I was very scared of that. So it won't show up in numbers, but I think it's really worth keeping an eye on. His minutes are much better under De Zerbi as well. So I wouldn't be worried about that. I definitely wouldn't be transferring Estupinian now. It's more a case of, if you don't own him, is Dunk a slightly safer pick with the minutes? That's where the conversation is for me. And then with the players here, I think this is a replacement for Arsenal or Brentford. And when we say replacement, it's not a replacement in the same way that, maybe you're trying to get rid of a player who doesn't have good minutes. We're trying to target 29, right? Where Brentford have a poorer double and Arsenal only have a single. And also going forward, maybe there are better fixtures on offer. And I should just mention with these fixtures as well, that I've kept the colour coding from the previous one, which I think Alex in the chat pointed out. Thank you very much for that. That was on purpose. I thought it was more interesting because we're basically looking at Shaw, Chilwell, James. It was more interesting to look at how they might be able to attack these fixtures and get attacking returns, which is the thing that's attracted everyone to Chilwell, not clean sheets recently. We do have the XGA of the team they play for there as well, so you can see some of the defensive prospects. But while it's a bit less intuitive, I thought it'd be interesting to look at how likely they are to get attacking returns in these next few weeks, not just defensive returns.
Yeah. And obviously, we've been talking a lot about Chilwell there. The problem I've got is that if you don't go with Chilwell for the double, so if you wanted to get rid of us as in Zinchenko or a Brentford player, who do you really go for? Because for me, I wouldn't be touching United. I wouldn't, especially with Casemiro now out for 4 games as well, which I think is a massive loss for Manchester United. I wouldn't be going for any of these. Wan-Bissaka could easily share one with Dalot. Wan-Bissaka is now probably first choice, but Dallow's still there. And in that double game week, it's more than likely that they get a game each. Shaw is obviously quite a nice player as well, but in terms of, are we going to keep clean sheets without Casemiro? Newcastle away, Brentford at home. It's not the best, is it? Tony could easily score against us. And Newcastle away, probably got 0-0 written all over it, but obviously that's going to be a tough fixture. So I think it's quite tough in terms of who you go for if you're not going for someone like Chilwell, who's got the upside and got the fixtures. So I get the want to go for him, but as Rich's already said as well, you're getting rid, potentially if you're getting rid of a Stupinian, you're getting rid of a player who you don't think is going to play, and you're bringing in a player who could easily not play as well. So it's it's a tough ask really.
With the Stupinian as well, I can't believe I'm sticking up for your player, Andy. No, but if he did, say in 29, he only cameoed in the Brentford game, for example, and got a point, it's still an extra point, and then he's got Bournemouth away.
Yeah.
And like Seb was just saying, he looked terrifying, which is something that Chilwell and James can do, to be fair. Mm-hmm. So, and also, if you're bench boosting in 29, which I think most people are, I wouldn't want to be selling a potential doubler. No. And we always say this, don't we, that at least if you've got a double and you're bench boosting, you're going to play something. You're going to get something from that player. He's not going to completely miss the whole game week. Touch wood, of course. And I think this whole discussion's made me think why the triple Newcastle is so interesting, the triple Newcastle defence, because, yes, it's quite boring, but they're going to play. Yeah. I think Newcastle fans are saying Burns the least nailed, but even he seems to be pretty nailed, even though Target's back. So I can really see the appeal of just having 3 Newcastle defenders. And maybe if you get some worries over some rotation, that's possibly the way you go. Even with the fixture you just said about, was it Man United Newcastle being 0-0?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. So you can just have the Newcastle side of it.
Yeah.
A lot of their games feel like they're going to be 0-0.
They do. They're that kind of team at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, well, not at the moment, but yeah, generally.
Yeah.
They've been conceding a lot recently.
Yeah, they do, yeah. Right, moving on to a lot of people this week planned to do a free hit in 28. And I think when a lot of people were thinking about their chip strategy, they decided a couple of weeks ago that they're going to free hit in this week. Obviously, before I wildcarded, I was going to be free hitting in this week because of the Liverpool and Fulham I had. I think it's you, Seb, isn't it? It's made our free hit team here. So Seb has put together a free hit 28 team with some very interesting players in there and some premium midfielders that maybe we'd be surprised about as well.
Yeah, so I've gone for it's a free hit. It's 1 week. So
Yeah.
there's a couple of points of interest in there. I mean, other options are available. Of course they are. I guess I should probably start just with who would be on the bench here, because this is just the 15. Of this, I would be benching Trippier, Botman, and Bailey, which would mean, and obviously Danny Ward as well, which would mean my team is Emi Martinez, come back to why he's the goalkeeper in a second, Gabriel from Arsenal, James and Chilwell. So lovely Chelsea double up there. We do have a little, actually we don't need to use it, do we? But the 3-4-3, looking at where against Dortmund, where they were both playing, it's like as many touches in the opposition penalty area as their own penalty area. That 3-4-3 is brilliant for them. And as I said, because it's a free hit, we just talked about Chilwell and James. If you know they're both fit, if you even get a word that they might both start, it's a 1 week thing. I mean, that's a lovely opportunity to take, I think, for me personally. We then have Martinelli and Saka in midfield. I would go Martinelli over Odegaard just for this 1 week. Again, if we feel comfortable in minutes, because I think with the current scenario, Martinelli is a better pick than Odegaard, even if in the medium to longer term, Odegaard's minutes make us a little bit safer, especially with Jesus coming back. This is a 1 week thing. We have Maddison. I think he picks himself there, right? It's a good fixture, great player. If anything, been pretty unlucky recently. He's creating silly chances that Iheanacho just cannot convert. Mm-hmm. And then I have Heung-min Son. This is maybe the definition of your free hit 1 week punt. It's a decent fixture. He's scored a couple of goals recently, fine, whatever. But I've got so much money in the bank. It's like what, him or a Chelsea midfielder instead of my Chelsea striker, a triple Arsenal midfield. I don't know. I just wanted to spend some money. I stuck Son in there, score me a goal. Kane up front has the same fixture, but is a better player this season, it would seem. Watkins and Havertz, we've covered both them plenty. And Havertz is the reason that I have Martinez in goal. They have, I think, let me double check the fixture to make sure I'm not talking silliness. Villa have Bournemouth, yes. So while Bournemouth have scored against Liverpool and looked all right, they are one of the poorer attacks in the league. They are away from home. I think that's nice enough for Villa. I've got Bailey on my bench. And I would have Kepa, I think, who have Everton at home. But I wanted my double Chelsea defence in James and Chilwell, and Havertz up front. Could be Felix, could be someone else. And the other fixture I'd maybe look out for, if you wanted to look at defence, was Palace. Is it they haven't had a shot on target in 3 games, which is one of those things that it'll end, so don't worry about it. But also their whole season numbers are just awful, like not good. I think they might have the lowest XG in the league, maybe. So you could go Ramsdale, but again, I think you probably prefer double Arsenal midfield, if not triple. Maybe that's instead of the Son, and I've got an Arsenal defender here. So rip it apart. Tell me why it's terrible.
So what formations is? Would you
so this
playing...
whatever formation that it would be
3-4-3
because Bailey on the bench with Trippier and Botman. I'd understand if you wanted to play Trippier, by the way. But
I was going to say benching Trippier. Okay, yeah, because I know that's one thing we said about Rich's one when he made a free hit idea a couple of weeks ago. Was he had?
I got stitched up there.
You had, yeah, you did.
There's no Spurs players, no Leicester allowed.
You had triple Newcastle. We said Forest away. You know they do score, don't they? So I'm not a massive fan of the Newcastle boys on the free hit, but you're obviously going to be benching them anyway, so that's fine. Love the idea of James and Chilwell for a free hit, because if James doesn't play, Trippier comes in, which is quite nice, I guess. Would you be tempted by Trossard over Martinelli?
Yeah,
3 assists at the weekend.
To be fair, that's a great shout. I think I automatically went for Martinelli. I thought about do I want Odegaard? Went for Martinelli. I feel like he's more threatening.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably, again, maybe you'd want a little hint of a lineup, but they're much of a muchness, right? Maybe one slightly more goal threat, slightly more assist threat, but I'm biasing that towards the weekend, of course. I think you can't go too wrong there. I go Martinelli just because I have a little more faith in his longer term numbers and performances for Arsenal, but I don't think there's too much in it.
Yeah. And I mean, I love the front line. I think the front line almost picks itself. But Rich, I bet you absolutely love the Son pick in the middle there.
I do. I was thinking if I was free hitting this week, I'd want to go for players that other people can't get to.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's being petty. I guess it's wanting to feel like you've made the most of a chip.
Mm-hmm.
So Son is going to be the kind of player that no one's going to have unless they're on free hit. So I really like that pick, and I think for that reason I do like the Trossard shout as well.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it could go wrong because I think most non-free hit teams are going to have 3 Arsenal, or at least 2. So I would like the idea of having Son and Trossard as well. I think I'd go heavier in midfield. I think I'd go for 5 midfielders and not have Havertz. And then potentially look at, I mean, you could even look at a 4-5-1. Basically, any formation is going to look good this week as well. I guess it's if you want to go for the attacking fullbacks, because I'd hate benching Gabriel as well.
I kind of I hate you. I kind of struggled.
That wasn't a dig, by the way.
Yes,
it was. It was a good one. I accept it.
Got you, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, what's your rank again, mate? I forget. Don't ask.
Just below yours, I think.
Yeah. I struggled a bit with midfield in terms of, like you say, you'd go 5 in there. I've obviously gone with Son, which is my 4th midfielder, not even my 5th. I feel double Arsenal, fine. Maddison, fine. They seem pretty locked. I guess I went for Bailey on the bench. You could go 5, but maybe then you're going triple Arsenal midfield, no Gabriel in defence. So maybe you start Trippier, go James, Chilwell. Obviously, you don't have Havertz. You could drop there as well. You could even go Kepa in goal. It's a few little changes. But for me, what felt like, and I think you put this nicely, I wasn't even really necessarily going for the what can people not get to. So where could I actually really make EO count for me for once? I wasn't even necessarily thinking that was Son. It was just, if I want James and Chilwell, which I do, if I want Havertz, which I do, if I want Gabriel, which I do, and then there's Martinelli, Saka, Trippier first on the bench. It's like, what have I left to myself? And I kind of felt like it was Son or, I don't know, like a Newcastle midfielder. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think I'd rather get their defence if I was going there.
The difference between because Andy mentioned that I did this draft before we had extra fixtures added, and that was where I think that Son spot is where I had Sterling, because it was impossible to spend the money. I think now at least there's something you could spend the money on.
One thing that I suppose is also quite interesting about this is that one team that's going to be heavily backed by a lot of people because of their wild cards or because of their fixtures, because of their transfer they've been doing, is Brentford. And you've got no Brentford in there. Obviously, you've got Maddison against Brentford, but you've got no Tony, you've got no Raya, for instance, and they're at home. Is that a conscious choice in terms of everybody else is going to have them? So imagine if I don't own them and I'm on a free hit and I do well. It could be an interesting way to go.
I wish I could say yes, a bit like Rich. He's probably thinking a bit more strategically than me. Not too interested in the defence. Maybe that's because I own 2 of them and they're doing me foul at the moment. But I think there are much better options. Chilwell, James, I love that so much. I want that if they're fit. Of course, that's the caveat. It would probably be Tony, maybe for Havertz. That would maybe be the swap. And that's where maybe you go Kepa in goal instead of Martinez. And you end up with maybe a slightly better team if you believe that Tony versus Leicester, isn't it, is a good pick, which it's not a bad pick by any means. I just slightly edged this way. But I think that's probably the big one that you might want to get in here, because we've just discussed it right in the forwards a minute ago. Kane, Watkins, Havertz, Tony, and then cheaper ones are probably the ones we're looking at. So it's 3 of those 4.
Yeah, lovely stuff.
It's going to cause bench points 2 weeks in a row for some managers. Not to be negative about it, but it's going to be hard not to have a good bench
in a blank.
Yes.
So this is the free hit team that people will potentially be going with, or something that Seb's kind of put together just to get us talking about it. But the other thing that some people are doing this week are wildcarding in 28 as well, so they can save their free hit for later and they can build themselves up for the next couple of weeks. So Seb, this is obviously, there's going to be some similarities, but there's going to be some, obviously the bench is going to be full of players that are probably not going to be playing this blank. Talk us through the wildcard decisions you've made here.
Yeah, so I mean, we've done a wildcard for 26, 27 and 28 now. There's a lot of similarities, so I won't cover that ground too much. The interesting points, maybe the triple Newcastle defence, but I'll run through the team first. We have Kepa in goal and then Steele. That's maybe interesting. I'll talk about that in a second. Gabriel, Chilwell, and then triple Newcastle defence, Trippier, Botman, and Burn. We have Ødegaard. As I mentioned, I'd prefer him longer term over Martinelli. And Saka in midfield. We have McAllister, Maddison, and Rashford. And then Watkins, Havertz, and Kane, same front 3, again up front. I think one of the big differences, if you're wildcarding now, this is where you lose Brentford. Because we're all looking at doing Tony to Haaland and 30. We might be looking at doing a Brentford defender out. I think, while they're not bad, they still double, of course. Especially Tony is maybe one you could keep. But the defenders I'd possibly bin off. I like Chilwell. I like Gabriel. We all like Trippier. And then that triple Newcastle defence, as we saw earlier with the fixtures on the forward section, I think it was, they have this potential of a further double to come. They have some decent fixtures. Also, Botman and Burn are easily benchable. If you can afford Shah, he's got good goal threat, so you can go there. And then we have McAllister and Steele again for Brighton. They've got some good fixtures, some decent doubles, potential of more fixtures to come. You may add another Brighton in the future, but the reason you don't have one here is to just navigate where they lose a fixture in this week. And Steele, I think, is a risk. I think some people will go for Ward, even maybe Pope, and then have a different defender to the triple Newcastle. As we stand right now on, Monday the 13th of March, I like Jason Steele as that gamble for a very, very cheap bench goalkeeper at 3.9, the potential of future doubles to come. But if you don't trust, in this scenario, you need him to be keeping his place until 32s, 34s, maybe even beyond. So if you don't trust that, absolutely fair enough to flip out of that. But otherwise, I think it's a nice mix of things we all know and we've all had for the last couple of weeks on wildcards, and a few small adjustments for how things have changed over these last few weeks and how the fixtures look going ahead.
Yeah. Anything you wanted to add, Rich?
No, I mean, I like the team. I would say Seb touched on it, but I'd want Share probably over Burn. That was one of my regrets in Wildcard 26. I had to go for Botman because Share had it was a suspected concussion, wasn't it? And I was when I was searching all the concussion protocols and stuff, ended up not going for Share. I'd really want him on my team, and it's probably going to be one I can't do now. That's probably quite a boring thing to highlight. But yeah, I really do like this team. I guess one discussion would be, when you get to 29, would you want to have a plan for Bruno Fernandes, with Casemiro being out, or would it be one you just go straight to Salah?
I think that's a really good question. And actually, in answering that, I've noticed something that I might change. I said I liked Ødegaard for the longer term, but Ødegaard would be my player that became Bruno or Salah or both. Mm-hmm. So maybe you do go for Martinelli in this team as well, because if in 2 or even 1 weeks, that slot is becoming Fernandes, then no worries about the longer term. Or Trossard, as we discussed. That could be a free hit pick.
If it's a 1 week punt, could you then go for Son? Or would it not have enough budget? He's quite expensive, isn't he?
That slot should be able to get to Salah based on this team, I think. You need to do...
So you could go for Son then.
You need to do Kane to Haaland in like 30. I think you lose Haaland for 1 extra week in this, or you have to make like a decision based on your transfers. But you have to do Kane to Haaland rather than like a Tony to Haaland, in order to also be able to have like a Salah going forward, I think, with this team. But yeah, you could start with Son if you fancied it.
And you have to have the pain of only having one Brighton midfielder when everyone's stressing about having two's not enough.
Yeah.
Although a lot of that is obviously for this week in 27, of course.
Yeah. Interesting. Right, lovely stuff. Right, should we move on to our teams then?
I was good. Andy, quick question for you, just because Rich asked. Casemiro out. We talked about the defence. Bruno Fernandes, is he playing deeper? Is he pushing up? What do you think?
I'd have thought he'd play deeper, yeah. He did at the weekend anyway. He played next to Casemiro, didn't he? And Sancho played 10. And he did come out and say a few quotes, didn't he, Ten Hag, saying something like, Bruno can play there, he plays really well there. I would be very surprised if he didn't drop back, at least at times, because we're going to want that control at the base of our midfield, and you don't get that with Fred and McTominay. Although McTominay came in and actually played really well against Southampton, and obviously it was 10 men, so it's hard to tell. But I wasn't going Bruno anyway, because I don't like him much as an FPL asset this year. But I 100% wouldn't be going for him now. I think we're going to really struggle without Casemiro. The fixtures are quite nice, but I still think we're going to struggle without him. So we are a completely different team without him. Rashford's still obviously a nice hold, and if you want to go Shaw, then that's fine. But I'm heavily favouring Maddison over Bruno Fernandes now for 29, personally.
See, for me, the dilemma's probably eventually going to be if I go for Salah in 29 or if I go for Bruno. But then down the line, I'll have to probably sacrifice Kane.
Yeah.
So,
do you really want Salah for that? That double is so, like, you could not get a worse double, could you?
The thing is, I'd already got this plan in my head where I could easily get Bruno Fernandes in or Salah, because I planned in 26. I wanted to have a route. So my fallback, if I didn't go for Salah, was to go for Bruno.
Yeah.
Now, this is obviously 29, so I'm jumping ahead a bit. But I think the dilemma a lot of us are going to have is if we don't go for Bruno, who do we even go for in that spot?
Yeah.
Because all the midfielders are so cheap. I'm not
What?
even that hot on the Maddison pick, really. He doesn't fill me with joy. He feels okay.
Yeah.
He
I don't
doesn't feel
mind the
like an
Maddison
essential
pick.
player for my team, though.
I don't. It's hard though because I don't think there are a lot. Like Bruno's not the player that he was all those years ago in terms of as an asset, is he? And Maddison, the problem with Maddison is he just doesn't have that player up top that's converting all the chances he's creating.
Oh.
But he can do it by himself, and he is on some free kicks and things as well, isn't he? So at least he's got those in there. But yeah, I think it's tough. There's just not those premium mids at the moment that are performing very well. Obviously, Salah 2 weeks ago was essential, and now nobody's going for him. And obviously, you've mentioned him in the double, so maybe he is the way to go. But I think I'd still prefer Maddison.
Yeah. It's all thinking about my James Ward-Prowse for replacements, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe Bruno isn't. Well, he has a double, so he is an upgrade.
Yeah.
But it sounds like they're going to be playing similar positions, but Ward-Prowse has better free kicks.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Man United have got the FA Cup, right? So maybe we want to no more Premier League until the double, but one match in the FA Cup where maybe we want to see how they line up. It's against Fulham, I think, so it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's late in the FA Cup as well, so it should be a strong team. If Bruno's playing further forward, that would give me a little more confidence. If he starts in like what is basically a pivot, yeah, it would put me off a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess it's a penalty taker in the doubles, isn't it? You can sometimes just try and get lucky.
Yeah.
If you're not sure, that is.
True.
Yeah. Right. Let's have a look at my team. So this is how my bus team is looking for the blank at the moment. So I've got Raya in goal. I've got Zinchenko, Henry, Trippier, Botman. All of those have fixtures. I've got March in at the moment who doesn't have a fixture. I've got Odegaard and Saka who do. I've got Kane captain against Southampton away at the moment, although that could be Saka. But he is captain, obviously, has a fixture. Haaland doesn't have a fixture, and Tony, who has Leicester at home. It will be, at the moment, Haaland to Watkins or Havertz. I did toy with the idea of Solanke, but with Brighton's fixtures coming up and the fact I'm free hitting in 32 and bench boosting in 29, I don't mind benching March. So actually, I'm probably going to be playing that third striker quite often. So it'll probably be Havertz or Watkins. It's really close between them. My heart is saying Havertz because I really want to go for it, but my head is just saying, just go Watkins. It just makes too much sense to go Watkins. So we'll see what happens close to the time. It could even happen tonight, but I doubt it. I've got plenty of money to play with it. So
crucially for you, you've got no money tied up in Haaland as well. Because I guess that might come into some people's thinking. Because I don't either. I don't know about Seb.
Yeah, no, same. I bought him back on 17 wildcard.
We all sell him at the World Cup.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that probably does make a difference for all of us, doesn't it? That we've not got any value tied up in him. If anything, we're going to be gaining money by selling Haaland.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel fine about that. It is what it is. I'll go out with 10. I'm not going to be taking a hit to do another one because I want all those players for the double that are on my bench. And obviously I'm bench boosting in 29 as well. So there's nobody here that I could get rid of for a -4 that's going to dramatically increase my team this week and next week. So Haaland out to, like I said, Watkins or Havertz feels absolutely fine. Captaincy's a little bit up in the air. Saka at home to Crystal Palace with how bad Crystal Palace have been recently seems quite good, but Kane is also a good captaincy choice most weeks anyway, so it could come down to the wire with who I captain, but obviously that can wait till the very end anyway. So not a lot of decisions to make this week. I do have 2 free transfers, by the way, so I'm going to be using one on the Haaland move, and then I'll have 2 next week where I do Odegaard to Maddison or Bruno, but it'll probably be Maddison, and then Zinchenko to someone like Chilwell or Shaw, potentially. So, the plan's looking all right so far. And we'll see what happens, obviously. Rich, let's have a look at your team and how it's looking.
Yeah, so I don't have 2 free transfers, thanks to Sanchez the other week. But yeah, so I'm playing a 5-2-3. So double Brentford, Raya and Pinnock, double Arsenal defence, Zinchenko, Gabriel, double Newcastle, Botman and Trippier. So that's going to be fun. Midfielders, I've got Saka captain and James Ward-Prowse, who's at home to Tottenham. Then I've got Kane, vice-captain, Tony. And my 11th man will be, I'll do Haaland to Watkins. I might even do it tonight. So I should have 11 players playing potentially. And like you, the captain's between Saka and Kane. I think I'm going to go for Saka.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's the home fixture. And I didn't even mention earlier, one of the reasons I went for McAllister last week was I think it was very close between him and Tony, but his EO was lower.
Yeah.
And I was ranked at 350k or whatever. So I do want to try and be a bit more aggressive in 50-50 decisions. And I think Saka will be less captained. Whether people agree that's a good reason or not, I don't know. I don't know.
I think Saka will be most captained.
Do you see? I've seen a lot of polls where it's Kane, because you have to think
really
Kane's more. I think they're quite similarly owned ownership levels, but Kane's just got 13 points, whereas Saka's blanked 2 games in a row.
Yeah,
I think that does come into thinking.
Maybe
I could be very, very wrong.
Kane is 30. Yeah, fair enough. That's very close.
I think I'm going to go Saka, and it's just kind of the effective ownership that probably edges it to me into taking a little bit more of a risk. But maybe if Tony scores a hat-trick during the week, I'll be a bit more timid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like expected points, and I don't mean necessarily expected points from, the Rate My Team model or review or anything like that, just your own interpretation of how many points you expect. If you literally expect them to be even, making a call based on EO, whether you want to go safer or riskier with that, is entirely fair enough. A little bit of free risk is always nice, especially if you want to add some rank.
Yeah, I guess another way of seeing it is I need to cough. Sorry, 1 second.
I genuinely thought that was your sentence. It flowed so lovely.
Another way you need to see it is I need to cough.
Sorry, I'm actually quite ill. Yeah, let's continue.
Yeah. Let's go on to Seb's team. So Seb's team, looking at yours, how's it looking for the blank?
5-2-3. Same as Rich, the formation of champions. I have Kepa in goal, Trippier, Ben-Mee, and Henry, which I hate so much. Gabriel, I mean, I chose it, so it's my fault. Gabriel and Botman at the back, so double Newcastle, double Brentford, and Gabriel. Saka captain with Ødegaard. I quite like that Arsenal little trio. Gabriel, Saka, Ødegaard. There's some points there, I think. I'd say Saka's pretty nailed is the wrong word, right? But I'm pretty comfy in Saka captain. I don't think I've thought about it being Kane. Maybe that's my mistake. But Crystal Palace at home, better than Southampton away. Arsenal, better than Tottenham. Saka, better than Kane in terms of FPL. More points for midfielder. I like that. And then Kane, Tony, Haaland is my front three. Haaland will become one of the strikers we've spoken about. I think I may be edging Watkins. And then I have Steele, Rashford, McAllister, and Matoma on the bench. So I'm fielding 11 if I use my 1 free transfer, which is why I did Sanchez to Steele last week. Although looking at your team, Andy, you're fielding 10, but have 2 transfers next week. I have 1. So what I really need for this to come out how I wanted it to is still to either keep a clean sheet, save a penalty, something like that this midweek. Otherwise, I will be 1 transfer behind you and down on points, even though you fielded 10 and I fielded 11, because I'll probably be wanting to make 2 transfers next week too, which would be a hit. There is a very, very small chance that I will take a hit this week and get ahead of the Chilwell move if I want Chilwell, say, over Shaw or even Reece James.
For
but
a Brentford defender.
Seems silly. Yeah, maybe. Obviously, international break, we'll see. It's for a -4. Could be careless. I've also missed a price rise, but it's something I've thought about, so I thought it only fair to share.
Ooh, like it.
I like that. I like that.
Oh, he likes it.
I'm back now, by the way. Sorry about that.
Yeah, he's back. Right, and then let's look at the community team. Am I the only one below the community team now, or is it above all of us still?
Oh, no, it's still beating all of us, mate.
Oh, good. Brilliant.
Yeah, of course. It's 103k. We're slowly sabotaging it. That's fine. It's doing fine. The only thing is McAllister, really. Raya, Trippier, Henry, Estupiñán, Saka, Rashford, Marsh, Matoma vice captain, Kane, Tony captain. So could all change if he goes crazy. Haaland, and then a bench of Kepa, Ødegaard, Zinchenko, Shah. So not as painful as some other people's. Very similar to yours, actually, Rich. But once again, of course, has benched Arsenal when so far would have been a good move to play them. But I think the team's looking good. We rolled the transfer, so we have 2 to come. We're set at 103k in the world. Probably break back into the top 100k after the midweek fixtures.
This is my team. Apart from I've got Botman, they've got Share.
Nice.
This is literally my
team. You know, in Game Week 17, Christmas, when we were like, who should we copy? Should we copy Review, Andy, or whatever? Well, we'll make it up.
They went with me.
Make it up for it. We're copying you.
Unlucky community. Right.
What chips does it have left? Just bench boost.
Bench boost, and we voted to use it in 29. Although I will check that again. But the plan is to use it in 29. 2 free transfers. I think there's a nicely bench boostable team here.
And they've used free here, have they?
No, but
Oh,
we
no.
didn't.
Cool.
We didn't vote when to use that.
Cool.
My suspicion will be 32 or 34, depending on fixtures and team setup.
Cool. Right, on to some community questions. We've got 700 people in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday evening. Chuck some questions in and we'll answer as many as possible. I have had a chat with Seb and Rich, and I've told them that they need to be quicker with their questions. So we're going to see how they get on tonight. Sorry, not their questions, their answers, obviously. And we'll see how they get on tonight. And we're going for 3 or 4 answered in 10 minutes. No, we're going to try and answer quite a few in 10 minutes if we can. Obviously, we'll still ask both of them just so we get a bit of a view. Andrea Sitter says, what's the best strategy if you have not played the wild card yet? Is free hit next game week viable, or do I take lots of hits? Seb, what do you think? Don't worry about the second bit. If you started your wild card, what would you do? When would you be using it?
That's so team dependent. But let's say you've held it because you can. So I think early 30s is your friend. Do the opposite to what we've all done.
Yeah. Rich?
Yeah, early 30s and then bench boost the next game week.
Yeah. Nice.
So wild card before a double, basically.
Yeah. P says, who is the best Salah replacement, Rich?
You can't replace Salah.
Nice.
He blanks. Oh, I'm meant to be quick and I can't think of anyone. Son and then back.
Son and then back. I like it. Seb?
Assuming your team is similar to everyone else's, apart from that, I'd say Maddison.
We've got Diva says, Seb, Tony captain in game week 28?
Well, no, because I guess Xhaka, Kane, Tony in that order. But
yeah. Rich?
Sorry, I was coughing. What was the question?
Do we go Tony captain in 28?
You don't get to buy yourself more time by coughing, friend.
Yeah, it's clever. It's clever.
Yeah, Andy had a chat with us, remember?
That's what my kids do in the class when they don't know the answer. Well, hang on. It's this.
I mean, Tony's a decent captain this week. I'd rather captain Kane or Saka.
Yeah. John Chapman says, which teams are going to be relegated, Rich?
It's impossible.
There's
Southampton.
So many. There's like 8 in the relegation zone, aren't there?
Yeah. Southampton.
In the fight.
Palace. Bournemouth.
Seb?
Bournemouth, Southampton, and anyone not called Leeds.
Ron Manager, hello Paul, says, do you guys think there is a good argument for not selling Haaland and selling, say, Estupiñán and March instead and retaining the value held in Haaland? Seb?
Yes to the first bit, no to the second bit.
Yeah. Rich?
I did look at something similar with Rashford out. I know Rashford's probably a bad example. I don't have money tied up in Rashford. So you could do something like Rashford out to retain Haaland, especially if you're not bench boosting in 29, for example.
Yeah.
And then you can choose if you start him at 29 or not.
I think it's a roll. I don't think it's Haaland or other transfers. It's you go with 10, you believe that Haaland can do what anyone else can do in a double against just Liverpool, and you have an extra transfer to, say, get Fernandes and Salah. Well, that might not work money-wise, but you know what I mean, right? I don't think it's Haaland or someone else. It's like a Haaland or a roll in this scenario.
Okay. See, I wouldn't roll. I'd want to maximise fixtures still. I think it's a good alternative to change the midfielder instead of striker. Although now me and Seb are answering long, aren't we? So I'm going to be quiet. Sorry, Andy.
Eric
Cough.
Eric Eman says, this is a super question, says, still have wildcard and free hit chips and one free transfer with 9 players in game week 28, but Nonto and Tarkovsky are amongst them. Do I use my free hit or do I wildcard? Or take a -4 and risk playing Nonto and Tarkovsky? I mean, in terms of what we've spoken about tonight, we've shown you what our free hit and wildcards would look like. So if you fancy going for that, we've already kind of shown you exactly what it is we would do if we were wildcarding and free hitting. Nonto and Tarkovsky are obviously, risky ones to go with if you've already only got 9. It seems like it would be a good opportunity for him to wildcard a free hit, doesn't it, Rich?
I don't think I'd do it. I think as long as you've got, like we mentioned, Kane and Saka, I don't think Tarkovsky's that bad a pick. dare I say it?
Yeah.
I think I'll try and muddle through if I've got, like, as I'll see the main guys, like having 3 Arsenal. and then you've got a powerful chip strategy for later in the season.
Yeah. Seb?
Super chat means you get a long answer from Andy. I like it. To
Yeah.
take the other side of it, I guess we don't know the rest of your team. So Rich makes a very good point. But I think with the information you've given us, that sounds maybe like a wildcard 28 to me, where you look at something similar we looked at earlier to set yourself up for 10 or 11 now, really make the most of 29. So that's where you could make some serious gains. You could have like 15 doublers, bench boost that or whatever. You've got the free hit for, say, 32 or 34, however that works for you. But depending on the rest of your team, you've got a couple of options open to you, which is nice.
Yeah. Joe Portland, what was Seb doing in the bath that took so long?
Oh, that's actually it wasn't me that was getting a bath. It was the 18-month-old was getting a bath.
Oh.
As he also does, every couple of years. Well, I guess it would be once, wouldn't it, if he's 18-month-old?
Matthew Walton says, do I get Chilwell or Shaw for game week 29, Rich?
Chilwell.
Yeah. Seb?
Chilwell.
Sam Odie says, why were Liverpool so rubbish against Bournemouth, Seb?
Variance.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Rich, what do you think?
Lunchtime kickoff.
Yeah. What? Trust Gandhi. Never trust Gandhi.
Basically, yeah.
Alex Mika, Andy, is Maddison not worth the transfer this week for March, basically a -2, and then just do Odegaard to McAllister in 29? Yeah, but then I've got to do a hit again to do another transfer if I want to get a defender that doubles as well. So, whereas doing it this way, I mean, I gain one transfer. I gain one fixture. No, I think I'd just be breaking even, wouldn't I? So, no, I don't really fancy that. And I don't really want to do the hokey cokey go in March to McAllister because that's just going to come back and hurt me, isn't it? So, and Derek Knowles says, where's the best place for fish and chips around your place, Rich?
I was about to say fish and chip shop. I don't know the name of it. I think there's one called Wings.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wings.
Fish and chip shop.
Yeah. Wangs. I really can't remember.
Wangs.
Is it the Wangs or Wings? What's that funny?
Oh, I don't know. So,
I was wrong talking about the bath now after what Rich just said. But where I live, probably literally my bath. But where I used to live in Hackney just over a year ago or so. So like everywhere. There's a great place, which is, they've got one in Hackney, and I think they've opened one somewhere else now in London, somewhere in East London probably. A place called Temple of Seitan. Used to be called Temple. Used to be like a fish and chip place or a chicken and chips place, I think. But went fully vegan a few years ago when we were there, and genuinely does, like, when you eat fish and chips or chicken and chips, after a night out, the thing you want is, ignore vegan or whatever, the thing you want is like grease. They do awesome milkshakes and a bunch of chips. They figured a way of doing a good vegan version of that, which is probably just deep frying it as hard as possible. But Temple of Seitan in London. Send me free stuff because I don't live there anymore. Send me free stuff.
Peas put, I'm not eating at Wangs. Mine is I just go to the coast, go to Lyme Regis or something like that, get some fish and chips. Yeah, lovely stuff.
We went to, is it years ago now, we went Rick Stein's in like Cornwall. Again, I only had the chips because vegan, blah blah blah, but like the fish looked amazing as well. That was awesome.
Yeah. Right, so I still can't believe Rich's answer. Was it Wings? Wangs? I don't know.
I'll find out. Wangs. I will find out.
One of those you want to deep fry, one you really don't.
Yeah. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much for joining us. People that are watching after the live stream, thank you for joining us. And people that are listening on the pod as well, thank you for listening as well. Rich, I hope you enjoyed yourself, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about the coughing at the end.
Yeah, you're fine, mate.
I'd hidden it so well, hadn't I?
You had. You done really well, actually.
Yeah.
And Seb, I hope you enjoyed your evening, bub.
I did, thanks, mate. I've got to go finish my bath now, so see you later.
Yeah, good man. And like I said, everybody in the chat and everybody listening, we hope you have a lovely rest of this game week and a good blank game week as well. May your arrows be green, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.